Hi everyone, welcome back to DK Cigarette Store, your YouTube channel for anything to do with collecting vintage cigarette packs. I hope you've been enjoying my videos, and if you are, please don't forget to click the subscribe button. Today, I'm going to take you through dating cigarette packs, in particular, dating vintage American cigarette packs. I'm asked all the time by a lot of collectors, Dheeraj, how do you date American cigarette packs without any reference materials or catalogs? In fact, this is not that difficult. And all you really need is a little bit of knowledge. And the main thing is that blue tax stamp that you will see on many cigarette packs and that I'll take you through today. So without further ado, let's make a start. For the purposes of this video, I'll be using this set of 11 cigarette packs from my collection to demonstrate how you can date them. They all come from different manufacturers and date from around the 1870s through to the 1950s. You might be able to tell at first glance whether they are older or more modern cigarette packs, but sometimes looks can be deceiving. It is worth noting at this stage that what I'll be describing to you over the course of this video is very much an overview and summary of how you can use tax stamps to date cigarette packs from the US. There will, however, be nuances that I won't be describing in this video, but of course, if you have any questions around dating cigarette packs in general, please do not hesitate to contact me using my contact details at the end of this video. Before we start, it is important for you to know a little bit about the history of tax stamps. These were brought in the 19th century by the US government to ensure that makers of tobacco, including cigarettes and cigars, paid the appropriate tax on their products. Tax stamps would be purchased by the manufacturers and affixed onto their products to show that they had paid the appropriate tax. Because these tax stamps were dated, it is therefore possible for us to use these to accurately date cigarette packs and boxes. So let's start off with this little box of perfumed Little Queen cigarettes. You can see the front and the back of the box, and on the back you can see the blue tax stamp showing the number 10, indicating there were 10 cigarettes in the box. Also, the fact that they were cigarettes rather than cigars and tobacco. And most importantly for us, the actual date of the tax stamp. On the next picture, I've blown up the actual cigarette tax stamp so you can see it more clearly. And at the top of the tax stamp, you can see the words Series 1879. This is the date that the tax stamp was brought in. Series 1879 tax stamps lasted from 1879 until 1883. So that gives us quite an accurate window with which to date the box. I have also zoomed in on the bottom of the tax stamp, where you can read Act of March 1st, 1879. Now you need to be careful there, because many people read that and use that to date the actual cigarette pack or box. In fact, that date is not the date with which the tax stamp was affixed to the box, but that indicates the date with which legislation was passed by US Congress. So that date should not be used to date the pack or the box. Later examples in this video will show you where the act date differs to the series date. The next example is a lovely cigarette pack called Sweet Moments cigarettes, made by Lidget & Myers Tobacco Company of St. Louis, Missouri. Again, you can see the blue tax stamp on the reverse of the box. Here, however, there is additional printing, which I shall describe. If I once again blow up the tax stamp, you can see the series number at the top has changed from Series 1879 to Series 1883. The Series 1883 tax stamp ran from 1883 to 1898, so that gives us a wider window in which to date the pack. You can see again at the bottom of the tax stamp Act of March 1883. So again, that represents the date that the act was passed by Congress. You can see, however, in this tax stamp, there is additional information provided in the form of what we call an overprint or a cancel. Many manufacturers would print additional information on the tax stamp, including the factory number. This was the factory with which the cigarettes were produced, the district of the state that the factory was in, sometimes the name of the company, but importantly, for dating purposes, the actual date of the print. In this case, you can see when I turn the date over, it shows 1896. In fact, for many tax stamps where there is an overprint or cancel, you can also see the date and the month. Not all cigarette tax stamps had cancels on them, but having them certainly helps us to date a pack much more accurately. And once again, what I'm describing here is a generalized view of the series tax stamps. In fact, the series 1883 tax stamps had overprints or cancels on them to represent series 1893s and 1897s. But I think to keep things simple, and for the purposes of this first video, the series 1883 tax stamp can generally be thought of as running from 1883 to 1898, unless there are specific cancels that you can see on the tax stamp. The following example is a Shanassi Brothers natural cigarette box. And as you can see on this one, it dates to 1898, with the same date for the act. The series 1898 tax stamp ran from 1898 to 1901, so again you can date the pack quite accurately there. Next is one of my favorite cigarette packs, American Beauty by the American Tobacco Company. This one has a series 1901 tax stamp, and the 1901 tax stamp ran from 1901 through to the end of 1909. The next box is one of my favorites as well. This is a rare series 1910 Virginia Bright cigarette box. You normally find the series 1883 Virginia Brights available, but this one is a series 1910 and a live one as well, which means the original cigarettes still remain inside. I'd like to highlight on this picture that the act date is slightly different to the series date, as I mentioned before. Here on the series 1910 tax stamps, we have an act date of August 1909 and a series date of 1910. It is easy to fall into the trap and date the pack to 1909, but in fact, unless there is a cancel or an overprint stating something different, series 1910 tax stamps started in 1910. And next, a beautiful second generation pack of Camel cigarettes. This one is still sealed and has a series of 1917 tax stamp, which only lasted 1 year, and that was 1917. After the series 1917 tax stamps, their nomenclature changed slightly, and so the next boxes will go on to demonstrate what these changes were, so you can tell the difference between the way a series 1917 tax stamp was printed and the way that we would use the later tax stamps to date cigarette packs. The next box is the sealed Kondax Turkish cigarette box by E.A. Kondax. You can see once I punch up the tax stamp that in fact the tax stamp looks slightly different. If I show you the different angles, you can see first of all that there is no series number at the top of the tax stamp. Instead, you can see a big number 10 showing the number of cigarettes, but no other information on the tax stamp indicating the date. And this will date the pack from after 1917 through to 1931, unless there is a cancel or overprint visible on the tax stamp. As collectors, we would normally date packs with these tax stamps to around the 1920s. So let's keep moving on. The next pack is one that's a favorite of many collectors because of its association with baseball. This is a Home Run cigarette pack, and on this pack you can see at the top it says 20, which means it was a pack for 20 cigarettes. And then you can see Series 102. Now the Series 102 tax stamp dates the pack to precisely 1932. Don't ask me why it's 102, but the way I remember it is 1932, 102. And from here it becomes easier, because as you move up through the years, the series number increases by 1. So for example, a 1933 pack would be series 103, with 109 being 1939, and then 110 being 1940. We would then continue through 111 until 1950, which would be 120. And the series tax stamps would go all the way until 1955, which here would be series 125. The series stamps would stop at 125, after which there would be other ways of identifying packs. But for the purposes of this video, I will stop at 125. So let me take you through the rest of the boxes here. The next one is called La Rumbera by Raul Garcia and Company. This one has an interesting tax stamp. As you can see, this has a 16 tax stamp, which means there were 16 cigarettes within the pack. At the bottom of the 16, there isn't a series number. However, below that, you can see an obvious cancel or overprint, which says series 106. So whilst the tax stamp itself doesn't have a series number printed on the tax stamp, the manufacturer has used the tax stamp, which would date to the 1920s, and put an overprint showing the actual date of the pack. And this was sometimes done in order to save money on buying additional tax stamps if tax stamps weren't actually used. My penultimate pack is a Marlboro pack by Philip Morris and Company Limited. And this one dates to the Second World War. As you can see, there's a series 115 tax stamp dating this pack to 1945. And finally, a pack of Kent cigarettes with a series 123 tax stamp dating to, you guessed it, 1953. So this takes me to the end of this video. I hope that I've shown you how you can quite easily date cigarette packs utilizing the tax stamps on them. I would like to take a moment to give big thanks to my friend and collector, Timothy Brassington, where many of these packs have come from. They are as much his collection as they are mine. As always, please do feel free to contact me if you have any questions on this video, and I hope you've enjoyed watching it.